Hello there. Something's been niggling at me for a couple of days. I read something about a week ago. You get these Facebook groups, don't you? And when they go on about vandalism and thefts and bike stealing and why kids are smashing windows, why they're burning down park equipment, somebody highlights it on your local Facebook group. I'm sure most of you have been on local Facebook groups, various themes, local community ones, sports clubs, that kind of thing. But it's mainly the local community ones where somebody will say that somebody's damaged something, they've broken a fence, they've been riding motorbikes on a football pitch, and the people who take the kids for football on the weekend in the mornings, they suddenly can't play on the pitch because, you know, somebody's been riding around on a motorbike in wet weather and it's damaged the pitch. You always get complaints from people about, well, the kids have got nothing to do. Do you blame them for acting up a little bit? And it's just rankled with me for a couple of days now. Have they got nothing to do? Or is it just an excuse? It's just a bit of a rant, really, because I think people in general on social media tend to pick up on, they come up with various excuses why something's gone bad or something's gone wrong, and they blame something just for the sake of blaming something without really thinking it through. So when people come along and they say, well, the kids have got nothing to do, it just set me off thinking a couple of days ago. And you see it a lot of the time. People will hold this magic joker card up and say, well, the answer is a youth club. The youth club is the answer. Because there's not many youth clubs around, but there are still a few. But because people hark back to youth clubs back in the day, and that's what they used to do, that is the answer why the kids are all playing up, because there aren't any youth clubs. So when they're only acting up because they're bored. Do you remember youth clubs? Now, I used to go to a youth club when I was growing up. We went a few times. It was in an old church hall, and it basically contained, from memory, it had a little mini sports hall where you had somebody trying to play football and somebody trying to play badminton at the same time, and then somebody trying to play table tennis in the other corner. So it was a little bit of bedlam. It was just a case of just pick up bats, pick up balls, kick balls around, play basketball, and do it all at the same time. So there was nothing particularly organised about it. In the other room there would be a pool table. There would be like a canteen. It was a kitchenette, and they used to make hot drinks, Bovril, Oxo, that kind of thing, tea, maybe coffee. There was tins of pop. There was the big jug of orange cordial, orange and pineapple if you were lucky. And then you pay like 10p for that in a little plastic cup, little 8-ounce cup. You'd maybe get Tunnocks tea cakes, Kit Kats, maybe somebody's made some cake. And I remember there was always a bit of tension there, and a lot of the tension was, there was a cassette player, or a ghetto blaster, as we used to call it. So that would basically be providing the music. So the arguments tended to stem from what sort of music should be played. The quieter it was, those who bothered to bring tapes. There would be a mixture of, at the time, mid-80s, so you're talking Guns N' Roses, you're talking maybe Aerosmith, was the other one, John Bon Jovi. The Smiths got a look in. That was where I was first introduced to the Smiths, back in it must have been the mid-80s. They were probably still going at the time, but I wasn't really aware of what they were and what they stood for at the time. I just liked the depressing music, so to speak. Yeah, so this youth club would probably run from 7 till 9, maybe one night a week, 2 nights a week. There'd be a couple of youth workers there, which, I guess at the time were there to kind of spot people who might have problems and be there for, be the cool adult, somebody to speak to. It would be a place for us to go when it was raining. We wouldn't ordinarily go for the fun of it. Ours was generally quite grim. Not really a place where kids used to make friends and hang around and that kind of thing. It was when the weather was bad. Yeah, it was a place that we kind of went for a novelty. It was never the glue that held people together, from what I remember. So now people think that kind of environment is going to be the answer to all the ills of modern day Britain. And I don't quite get it. And I think it's an excuse, basically. When they say back then kids didn't have much to do, we did. We had what they call push bikes, which is where you pedal them yourselves. They didn't have batteries like the kids have in their bikes and their scooters nowadays. We had scooters, we had bikes. We would play football. We would go exploring in the woods, across the fields. We would, when the farmer close by would cut the grass, we would make straw dens. And yeah, we were primary school age at this time, early on. So we're going back a little bit further. Going into high school, music was obviously a thing with Stone Roses, the Smiths, a lot of rock metal. Chicago housey music was coming into the charts a little bit. A lot of Spandau Ballet, Duran Duran. Pop was the thing. Top of the Pops was on. People cared about who got to number one in the charts. People listened to the radio, and you tended to hear the records that were in the top 40. Computers were just becoming a thing. Commodore 16, Commodore 64, Spectrum 48K. Ataris were there in the early 80s, late 70s. Big cartridges that you pushed into your games console. Video arcades, fruit machines, amusement arcades, that kind of thing, pinball. Those were all a feature of towns. Even my little village used to have an amusement arcade. But in terms, I don't recall us ever being that hard up in terms of what to find something to do, whether it was just going around a mate's house listening to records or hanging out on the streets. We did play a lot of sport as kids. We used to play bits of tennis. We used to play football quite a bit because we were involved with football on the weekends, so we were involved with that at school as well. Obviously not all kids are sporty, but we had things to do, and I don't recall there ever being a point when we thought, let's go and smash that window. Let's go and help ourselves to some stuff in that shop. And I used to get £1 a week pocket money at the time, which was I remember my daddy pulled his trick on me. He said, but it wasn't a trick, it was a very clever thing really. He said, you can either have 10p a day, and this must have been in the very early 80s, and he said you can either have 10p a day pocket money, or you can have £1 a week. So when you get into the maths of it, you go, ooh, I could have £1 a week is 10p a day plus 30p, and you get it all in one lump sum. So you'd take that, and then invariably you'd end up spending it in no time at all, in the space of 1 or 2 trips to the shop, and you'd be empty again. So then you'd suddenly think, oh God, if only I'd rationed it. And that's what they were teaching us, rationing and looking after money. We could have either spent the big amount, or we could have saved some of it if we wanted to, or we could have just opted to have 10p a day, so we always had something to go at, and that was enough for a little trip to the shop to get a sherbet dip dab or whatever it was. But it taught us, it taught us things. So in terms of, we didn't need much, there wasn't much to spend money on. We would save up occasionally and buy a computer game for the Spectrum and wait 45 minutes for it to load, only to be disappointed at the end of it when the game crashed. But I suppose it's relative. We didn't have much to spend our money on, so we had to make our own entertainment. And I think if you go back a further generation to our parents' age, I'm in my 50s now, early 50s. My parents, my dad's 80, over 80 now, but 30 years before, they would literally have a bat, a ball, a spinning jenny, the kind of the things that we had are the kind of things that our kid, that our parents could only dream about. They didn't have any of that. They used to have to work. They got very little in the way of toys, spinning tops, I believe, dolls, that kind of thing. So generationally, we were a million times better off than what our parents were. So that leads me on to modern day, and I've been seeing this for many years. And the excuse as to why kids are misbehaving and causing trouble and upsetting people in shops and thieving, and I know stealing has a different entity behind it with regards to the cost of living and things like that, and why kids are stealing. I get that. But general bad behaviour, bullshit behaviour, I think a lot of it is misguided, because they say the kids have got nothing to do. So let's have a little rundown. So yeah, modern day. Let's kick this off with, let's start big. The internet. We have an internet now. We have computers. We had bikes. We had skateboards. We had roller skates that you would tie onto your pumps. We had a couple of things like that: bats and balls, tennis balls, tennis bats, tennis rackets, cricket. We used to play bits of cricket. Nowadays you've got hoverboards, wobble boards, all sorts of carts, all sorts of types of bikes. We've got all sorts of flying things that they can use. They have drones. The drones you can get now are phenomenal. I remember us having like the odd sort of, there would be a plane, you'd have a battery attached to your plane, and there would be a cable between your controller and the plane, and it just crashed constantly. But you've got all these gadgets. Now these are gadgets that don't involve sitting on your backside and doing nothing. These involve thinking about, sometimes building, customising, doing up. They have mini motorbikes. They have numerous types of battery powered scooters, bikes, that kind of thing. So if you're active, there's numerous things like that you can get involved with. The internet is the big one. The internet has given us gaming. The computers obviously give us the gaming. The internet has given us the online gaming, the worlds that they play in, your Fortnites, your Call of Duty, numerous games where they can play on online platforms against other people. And the problem with, I used to quite like games. I talked to a friend earlier tonight, and we both used to like a particular shooting game, but we said, nah, it's just we just haven't got the time, we haven't got the patience anymore to learn how to operate the controller, and then you have to buy multi-packs for this and that, and online access for this and that, and there's different, you can play a game 20 different ways. You can go collecting things, you can go killing things, you can play team battles. The games themselves are just too immense. They're very, very immersive, to the extent that kids will spend all night playing on them, and they'll keep playing them, and they're never ending. And the reason for that is to keep them buying tokens and gold books and all sorts of things that they need to upgrade the characters. But the point is, there's plenty of time you can spend on that. The internet itself, with social media, has given kids numerous hours of entertainment. I know at this point in time Australia is currently trialling a ban for under 16s. I need to look into that myself because I'm interested in that. But the internet gives them so many things to watch, so many ideas for games. Unfortunately, the downside of social media is it's allowed people to display and to upload bad behaviour, which in turn encourages bad behaviour in the real world. And then also the kids follow them, and they will then decide to try and upload their own bits of fighting and pranks. And some of these things are quite nasty in terms of what they do, steaming into shops, riding bikes in shops, generally being layabouts. But again, maybe that's a big reason why a lot of the kids are, they're doing all this for clicks. They're wanting to upload it, they're trying to impress their friends, and instead of like being a good footballer as a kid, or being good at tennis and impressing your friends, or being good at pool or snooker or whatever, perhaps they're learning a lot of this bad behaviour from other kids that they see on the internet. So add to that numerous other activities they can do. There's football courts all over the place, there's tennis courts everywhere, they can play basketball. We went watching an ice hockey match the other night. Lots of fun. There's football matches, rugby league, there's tennis, there's numerous sports on the TV, there's numerous films on the TV, numerous series on the TV. Japanese animes coming up in a big way. There's plenty of active things for people who are involved in sport that they can find something to do. So why is that kid breaking that window? Why are those kids setting fire to those swings at a play park? It's because they've got nothing to do. Now, I don't know about anybody else out there, but I think they've never had more to do than they have right now. From my dad's generation to my generation to the kids' generation now, they've had an exponential growth in terms of the things that they can take part in, get involved in, learn, watch, and do. So why do people blame the whatever government's in of the day to say, well, it's because you've taken away the youth clubs? And just to go back to full circle of how I started this video, what is that drafty youth club going to give them that they haven't already got? Why are people I think deep down people know that there's never going to be youth clubs again. Not in the same way as there was in the past. So it becomes a convenient excuse for bad parenting, for people who don't care, and for people who don't even want to think about any solutions. So what they do is they blame something. Well, the government won't let us have youth clubs, so that becomes a very convenient excuse, and excuses bad behaviour rather than confronting it head on. So the point of this, it's just a rant, really. I've had numerous disagreements with people online about kids' bad behaviour. My kids pretty well behaved, to be fair. We're very lucky. We've had no major traumas. I, on the other hand, got brought home by the police once or twice, was it? I can't remember, when I was a little one, but it was for nothing bad. But again, people will argue that there's no police on the streets to attack any of this. But I just think that people need to get a grip. You know, people need to take personal responsibility. They need to take responsibility for the children. They need to instill in their kids a sense of self-worth if they can. They need to give them the skills that they need to navigate through life, because life is infinitely harder now than it probably was when I was growing up. And my parents might say the same as well, even though they were just after the Second World War. But you can't just keep blaming the lack of youth clubs and that kids have got nothing to do. You can't just say that. It's not an excuse. It's a convenient excuse, because it's never going to be brought back in a particular way, and you know that, and that's what you're claiming. But no, I just thought it needed saying, and I know a lot of people think it. But yeah, I just think that it's time that people just wised up a little bit and stop blaming everybody else for the ills. We all have good luck in life and we all have bad luck in life, but constantly making excuses for poor behaviour is not really acceptable. I just thought I'd share my thoughts with the world, just to see if anybody agreed with me or disagreed with me. I don't know. A little experiment, see what happens. Anyway, if you've watched this, thank you for watching. I'm going to upload it at some point. Might have to cut it out a little bit and figure out how all that works. But thank you for watching anyway, and I'll maybe see you on another one sometime.